In 1944, something strange started happening across American churches. The massive bronze bells that had defined their towers for over a century were quietly being removed, replaced, or in many cases, melted down completely. The official story said it was for the war effort, scrap metal for ammunition, patriotism in action. But the war ended in 1945 and the bells did not come back. The new churches built through the 1950s used speakers and electronic chimes. The old bell foundries that had operated since the 1700s shut down one by one. By 1970, an industry that had cast bells for half the country was almost gone. So what was really inside those bells? And why do so many researchers today believe what happened in 1944 was not a war effort at all, but a coordinated removal of something the public was never supposed to understand? If you have ever stood next to a real bronze bell when it rang and felt your chest vibrate before you even heard the sound, you already know something modern speakers cannot replicate. Subscribe before this video gets buried in the algorithm. We are going somewhere most channels will not touch. To understand what was lost, you have to understand what a real church bell actually was. Not the small handbells, the big ones, the towers. A standard American church bell from the 1800s weighed between 2 and 10 tons. Some weighed over 20. They were cast from a specific alloy, roughly 78% copper, 22% tin, the exact ratio that metallurgists call bell bronze. This was not a casual choice. Bell bronze is brittle. It cracks if you cool it wrong. It costs many times more than the metal you would use for a cannon. And yet, for over 1,000 years, every major civilization that built towers built them around this exact alloy. Why? Because bell bronze does something other metals cannot. When struck, it produces 5 separate tones at the same time. The hum tone, the prime, the minor third, the perfect fifth, and the octave. These 5 frequencies stack on top of each other and create what acoustic engineers call a sustained partials field. The vibration does not fade in a straight line. It folds back on itself. It can travel for miles. And in the right tower geometry, it can resonate for more than a full minute after a single strike. Now compare that to a modern electronic chime. A speaker produces one tone at a time. Layered tones if you want, but generated digitally. There is no sustained field. There is no real resonance. There is no physical vibration of bronze pushing air molecules across the entire city. The two are not the same instrument. They are not even close. If you ever get the chance to be in a tower when a real bell rings, the first thing you notice is that you do not hear it the way you hear other sounds. You feel it first. In your sternum, in your teeth, in the floor beneath your shoes. The sound arrives in your ears almost as an afterthought. And it does not stop when the bell stops moving. The bronze continues to release energy for 40, 50, sometimes 90 seconds after the strike. The whole building becomes part of the instrument. The old bell makers understood this completely. They did not design bells to be loud. They designed them to be felt. The shape of the bell, the thickness of the wall, the curve of the lip, the height of the shoulder, every measurement was tuned to push specific frequencies into the world. A bell was not a noisemaker. It was a precision tool for moving air. And here is what Tartarian researchers want you to look at next. In every old American city, the church bells were not random. They were tuned to each other. The First Methodist would ring at one frequency, the Catholic Cathedral at another, the Presbyterian Church at a third. Together they formed a harmonic grid across the entire downtown, a standing wave pattern that covered every square block. You can still find the documentation for this. Bell foundry records from companies like Manili in New York, McShane in Baltimore, and Buckeye in Ohio show that bells were ordered in specific tuning sets. A city ordering 10 new bells would specify each one to the foundry. The bells were sold as a coordinated system, not as individual objects. Why would anyone go through the trouble of acoustically tuning an entire city if the only purpose of a bell was to tell people it was Sunday? The official answer is that it sounded nice, that communities took pride in their bell systems, that it was tradition. The alternative answer is something else entirely. Some researchers point to historical documents that describe bells as having functions far beyond religion. In medieval Europe, bells were rung during storms. The belief at the time was that the vibration could disperse lightning and stop hail. We dismissed this for centuries as superstition. Then, in the late 20th century, researchers studying infrasound discovered that low-frequency vibrations actually can influence cloud microphysics. The Catholic Encyclopedia from 1907 openly listed atmospheric purification as one of the formal functions of consecrated church bells. It was not hidden. It was printed in the most respected reference work of its era. So if bells had a documented historical function beyond sound, what happened in 1944? The war metal drives are the starting point of the story. In the United States, citizens were asked to donate scrap. In Germany, the Nazi government had been systematically confiscating church bells since 1940, under what they called the Bell Sacrifice Program. By the end of the war, over 170,000 bells had been removed from European churches and stockpiled in Hamburg. Most were melted down for shell casings and rifle parts. But here is the part that does not add up. In Hamburg alone, around 15,000 bells were still waiting to be melted when the war ended. They were never returned to the parishes they came from. Most were sold off to scrap dealers between 1947 and 1952. The records of where they went are incomplete to this day. Some historians have spent their entire careers trying to trace what happened to the Hamburg Bell Cemetery, as it came to be called. The trail goes cold in the early 1950s. And in America, something similar was happening. There were no large bell confiscations during the war. American bells were not melted in the same volume as European ones, but after the war, something changed in the foundry industry. The Manili Bell Company, which had cast bells since 1826, closed in 1952. The Buckeye Bell Foundry, founded in 1837, closed in 1951. The McShane Bell Foundry survived only by switching almost entirely to memorial plaques and small chimes. The largest American foundries went out of business one after another in a 5-year window immediately after the war ended. Think about that for a moment. These were companies that had survived the Civil War. They had survived the financial panic of 1893. They had survived the Great Depression. They had survived 2 world wars. And then, within 5 years of victory in 1945, almost every one of them was gone. The skill of casting a tuned, multi-ton bronze bell, a skill that had been passed down through families for a century and a half, was lost in less than a generation. There are fewer than 10 people alive in the Western world today who can cast a true tuned bell from raw bronze. 10 people. To preserve a craft that built the soundscape of an entire civilization. The reason given was demand. Churches were no longer ordering full bell sets. They were buying electronic carolling systems from new companies like Schulmerich and Verdin, which began heavy production in 1948 and 1949. These were speaker-based systems that played recordings of bells through tower-mounted amplifiers. The cost was lower. The maintenance was easier. The towers no longer needed to be reinforced to hold multi-ton bronze. But the sound was not the same. And it was never going to be the same. Now here is where the timeline becomes important. The shift from real bells to electronic chimes happened across the entire Western world inside the same window, between 1944 and 1955, in Germany, in France, in England, in the United States, in Canada, in Australia. Every country that had a Christian bell tradition saw the same transition in the same decade. No country went the other direction, no region resisted. The industry simply collapsed everywhere at once. Coincidence is the official explanation. War recovery, modernization, cheaper alternatives. The Tartarian view is that the bells were removed because they did something that became a problem in the post-war world. What that something was depends on which researcher you ask. Some believe the bells generated atmospheric resonance fields that interacted with weather. Some believe they emitted infrasound that affected human consciousness in ways the population had grown accustomed to over many generations. Some believe the entire bell network across each city formed part of a larger electromagnetic infrastructure that the new post-war power grid was designed to replace. And some go further. They believe the bells were technology of an older civilization, one that the official version of history does not acknowledge ever existed. There is one detail that the more technical researchers always point to: the mounting hardware of the old bells, the cast iron yokes that held them, the copper wiring that ran through many of the older bell towers, supposedly for lightning protection, the grounding rods that descended from the bell housing into the foundation stones. In some older European cathedrals, those grounding rods went down 40, 50, sometimes 70 feet into the earth, far deeper than any lightning protection system would ever require. Why would a passive sound instrument need to be grounded to the bedrock of the planet? The official answer is structural. The towers were heavy. The grounding was incidental. Every researcher who has actually examined the construction documents from the 1800s comes away with a different impression. The bells were wired into something. What that something was, nobody on the official side wants to discuss. You do not have to accept the most extreme version of the theory to notice what is undeniable. The bells were removed in a coordinated time window. The foundries that made them were destroyed in the same window. The replacements that came in were inferior in every measurable way except cost. And the cultural memory of what a real church bell sounded like has faded so completely that most people today have never actually heard one in person. Walk into a downtown of any American city built before 1900. Look at the towers, the tall stone ones with the louvered openings designed to let sound pass through. Most are empty now, or they hold a single small bell that rarely rings, or they hold a speaker. The architecture is the same as it was in 1880. The contents are not. Something was taken out, something was put back in its place, and almost nobody noticed because the change happened during a war when everyone was looking somewhere else. There is one more piece of this story that the official histories do not mention. In the late 1930s, just a few years before the bell drives began, a man named Royal Raymond Rife had been demonstrating in California that specific frequencies of sound could destroy biological organisms. His work was suppressed and his lab was destroyed in 1939. In the same decade, the physicist Nikola Tesla had been writing about the resonant frequency of the Earth and the possibility of using large-scale vibration to transmit energy through the atmosphere. His papers were taken by the United States government in 1943, the year before the bell drives intensified. In 1944, the bells started disappearing, quietly, without a public announcement, without a single newspaper running a story about it. Whether these events are connected is something each viewer has to decide for themselves. But the timeline is the timeline. The men who studied resonance were silenced. The instruments that produced resonance at city scale were removed, and the technology that replaced them was incapable of doing what the originals did. What survived the transition is a memory. People who lived through the 1930s often describe the sound of church bells with a reverence that seems strange to modern ears. They describe feeling them in their bones. They describe storms that broke up when the bells rang. They describe a sense of order in the air on a Sunday morning that no modern recording captures. We were told it was nostalgia, that the past always sounds better in memory. But the past also sounded different, physically different, measurably different, and the question Tartarian researchers keep returning to is this one. If the bells were just decoration, why were they removed in such a hurry? Why was the entire industry that made them shut down in less than a decade? Why has no major bell foundry been built in the Western world in 70 years? The answer the establishment gives is economics. The answer some of the older bell makers gave in interviews recorded in the 1960s before they passed away was different. They said the orders simply stopped coming. That after the war, something in the church administration itself changed. That the requests for full-tuned bell sets were replaced with requests for inexpensive single bells or no bells at all. They could not explain why. They only knew that the demand vanished, and with it their craft. Whatever the bells were, they are mostly gone now. A handful of cathedrals still ring real bronze on Sunday mornings. If you live near one, go stand in the tower square the next time it rings. Stand close enough that you can feel the air move around you before you actually hear the sound. You will understand immediately why this is something they did not want you to have. This is one of those stories that the deeper you look, the less the official version holds up. If you want to see how the same pattern shows up in railway architecture, post office buildings, and the cast iron facades that disappeared in the same 50-year window, the video on screen will take you there next. Subscribe if you made it this far. The bells were only the beginning.